Hey friendo, Steve here. So the pandemic era is quickly coming to a close. AEW has already announced that they're going to be bringing fans back. They're going to be touring starting in early July. It's been reported that WWE is going to do the same thing in mid-July. And so I thought it'd be cool to take a look back at the pandemic era, the last year and change of wrestling, and see if there's any changes that wrestling companies were forced to make that ended up making for a more desirable product, a product that's more interesting to watch now that fans are coming back and things are probably going to be going back to normal. So let's go ahead and do this. Before I do, though, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and if you end up not liking the video, guess what? You can take it back, and I think you can give me a thumbs down by the end of the video. So yeah, do that. It helps the channel grow. Let's hop right into this. Number 5 is a lighter schedule. Even before the pandemic, WWE was not really making any money off of their house show touring circuit, and the rumor was that they were going to be scaling down pretty significantly their house show tour. AEW, on the other hand, weren't doing any tours because they were basically kind of brand new, and that was in their plans to add some house shows during the week to their schedule. That's probably still going to happen. WWE will probably end up bringing some house shows back, but it seems like they're going to scale that back. And I just wonder if, given that there hasn't been as many dates for the talent, I don't know how that would have affected their pocketbook, their wallet, their bank account. But you got to figure their bodies probably have been extended in terms of how much more they can take over the long course of their career. Even 1 year where you're working 52 dates or even 60 dates as opposed to 300 dates or even 200 dates probably is a lot more desirable for the wrestlers on the body. They can have extended careers if those schedules stick around, which they probably won't. But you got to figure that's probably a better deal than the way it was before, where some wrestlers would work like 300 days a year, which is absolutely insane. So I don't know. I just feel like from a fan's perspective, understanding that these wrestlers are putting their bodies on the line for my entertainment and knowing that they don't have to do it 4 days a week is, gives me a little bit of peace of mind, makes me feel a little less guilty that they're putting themselves through this. So I think maybe the lighter schedule is probably to a degree going to stick around, maybe not as light as the like in the pandemic era, which is like basically once a week. I know that AEW has Dark and Elevation, so some of their wrestlers are probably working a little bit more, but WWE just has basically TV to work, and that's kind of it during the pandemic. Must be kind of nice on those wrestlers to be able to come in, do TV, go back home, spend time with their families as opposed to constantly being on the road. I'm just speculating there. Maybe the lighter schedule will stick around. Probably not as light as during pandemic, but yeah, that'd be kind of nice for the wrestlers. Next up, the Capitol Wrestling Center, aka the NXT, where that's filmed, the Performance Center. So midway through the pandemic, NXT had to shift venues from Full Sail to the Capitol Wrestling, so the newly dubbed Capitol Wrestling Center. They sort of took the PC and like reformed it on the inside to shoot NXT there. They've got the hockey glass up they bring in a couple of fans and they have their own version of Thunderdome in there. I think it looks great. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. And if they can pack that place the way they used to with Full Sail, with like a smaller crowd, obviously, than like a normal sized AEW type venue, that's a really passionate crowd, kind of like the old Full Sail crowd. I think that'd be great. I'm pretty sure they're going to continue to pack in the Capitol Wrestling Center with fans. It seems like this is something that is going to stick around. I really like the look of it. I think that if they can somehow, I have no idea what like the structure can do if you can move like walls back and pack more fans in, get rid of Thunderdome and put fans in there. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that or if they're just going to continue to keep them in that same space. But you pack that chock full of fans once it's completely safe to do so. And I think that can make for a really, really cool atmosphere. I think that they really hit a home run with the Capitol Wrestling Center. I think it looks great for what NXT is doing. I think Triple H is intent on keeping it in one location. I think he likes that relationship that Full Sail had, the Full Sail crowd had with the wrestlers. And given that they're in the same general vicinity of Full Sail, you'll probably see a lot of the Full Sail crowd come back to the Capitol Wrestling Center and reestablish those relationships with all the new wrestlers who have come in since then, guys like Karrion Kross, Bronson Reed. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Capitol Wrestling Center will look like with more fans on a week-to-week basis. Maybe they can sort of become that other element of NXT that's kind of been missing ever since fans have been gone in a large way. Next up, fewer part-timers. So obviously, during the pandemic era, we saw what seemed to be the retirement of The Undertaker. We saw no Saudi Arabia matches where guys like Shawn Michaels would come out of retirement, or they bring Kane out of semi-retirement. So we saw those guys, and Triple H doesn't really wrestle much, or I think at all. And so those guys haven't been around. Brock Lesnar's been gone ever since WrestleMania last year. So this year's WrestleMania, no Cena, was kind of refreshing. We got back to guys that and women that are there now full-time on the roster, not part-time members of the roster. We saw Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair headline night one. Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre headline night. I'm sorry, no, they didn't headline night two. They were on night one. They opened night one. We saw Roman Reigns head of the table, Daniel Bryan and Edge headline night two. And yeah, Edge is technically a part-timer, but I think the way his contract is scheduled, he's going to have periods of time when he is there doing full-time work. And the build to WrestleMania, he came off as a full-time star. Daniel Bryan, when he's there, he does those full-time programs. Granted, he's out of the contract now, so we'll see how that affects him down the line. But it was kind of refreshing for WWE not to have to rely on part-timers after such a long time of them doing so. It's like, okay, we're going to bring in Goldberg. Are we going to bring in Brock? Are we going to bring in Cena? This WrestleMania was sort of, for the most part, devoid of all that. We didn't have all the part-timers coming in, and I don't know how much of that really had too much to do with pandemic. Obviously, with Brock, it seems like a situation where he could actually be retired, and we just don't know. It might be coincidental, but it doesn't seem like, even with fans there was much of an attempt to get John Cena or Brock Lesnar. At least nothing was reported in, for example, the Wrestling Observer or Fightful. So yeah, it seems like fewer part-timers. And honestly, I think that's where the WWE needs to go. I don't think they need to be wheeling out Undertaker for one last match. I don't think John Cena should come back unless it's to do a job for Roman Reigns, because I think that'd be kind of fun to see, to be honest with you. Even a Brock Lesnar feud, I wouldn't mind seeing with Roman Reigns. But that's just sort of to reestablish Roman, or to sort of, put that punctuation on him being the head of the table. And it doesn't need to be WrestleMania matches. Those really should be for the full-time workers. So once fans come back, it'll be interesting to see if WWE falls into those old habits of bringing in part-timers. Obviously, AEW is discovering the joy of part-timers like Sting, who can come in and do some cinematic matches. Speaking of which, let's get to that next. Cinematic matches. I think that they were, for the most part, a pretty big success. As with anything, there's going to be the good and the bad, the hits and the misses. But I think when we got things like that awesome Money in the Bank match, that was more like it's a mad, 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 mad world. The Firefly Funhouse obviously was an awesome, awesome match. The Boneyard match was really, really good. AEW's Sting and Darby Allin versus Team Taz match I thought was really good, and I get the feeling that AEW is probably going to be the company to embrace cinematic matches a bit more regularly. I kind of don't feel that's going to be the case at the upcoming Double or Nothing, where it's probably going to be Darby Allin and Sting versus Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. That's probably going to be the kind of match, because as a tag match, Sting can sort of hang back do some moves that won't impact him too much, given that he's like a million years old. But I feel like after that, the next Sting match we'll probably see is probably going to be another cinematic. I like that Tony Khan seems to be open to the idea of keeping that element around. WWE probably not so much. Ever since we've seen Thunderdome, Vince McMahon has sort of just treated Thunderdome like, okay, everything's back to normal, same as it ever was. And so he's ditched the cinematic match. That kind of makes me sad because I feel like those have a lot to offer in terms of varying up the product. Prior to the pandemic, we had seen cinematic matches here and there. Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt had their House of Horrors match, which eventually came live to the ring, but the majority of that match was taking place up on the big screen. I was there at that particular pay-per-view. I still thought it was rad. I know a lot of the crowd didn't. But yeah, I hope that WWE embraces the cinematic match. I mean, even once a year, if they did something kind of cool with that, with some of the characters that it would make more sense to do that with. Obviously, there was a certain period during the pandemic era before Thunderdome when WWE would rely on it at least once a pay-per-view. And we even saw it spill into NXT with a couple of cinematic matches with Gargano and Ciampa, and of course Adam Cole and Velveteen Dream. That was kind of a crappy one. So yeah, hopefully this will be an added, something else that the WWE and AEW will keep in their arsenal. WWE probably not. AEW seems like they're going to keep on doing that. All right, number 1, shorter pay-per-views. So generally speaking, and this isn't like, let's try this again. All right, my number 1 is shorter pay-per-views. It has been a breath of fresh air to get these pay-per-views that are generally speaking between 2.5 and 3 hours long from the WWE, as opposed to what they were doing prior to the pandemic, which was these 4-hour-long pay-per-views, sometimes 5 hours in the case of Royal Rumble. I think the last Royal Rumble was like 5 hours long. WrestleMania the year before, WrestleMania was starting, including the kickoff show, starting to push like 7-8 hours. And that's just a lot to sit through in one sitting. It really is. This year's WrestleMania, if you take nights 1 and 2 together, it was probably one of the longest WrestleManias because they were each like 3.5 hours long, maybe a little bit longer. But the year before that, pre-pandemic, so it would have been 2019. I think it was like a 6-hour long pay-per-view or 5-hour long pay-per-view with like a 2-hour long kickoff show. That's like 7 hours of pay-per-view. That's a lot to sit through. The breezier, shorter pay-per-views are, simply just more enjoyable. There's no fat in the card that keeps the certain matches to Raw and SmackDown, which makes them feel, more important. Those shows are a bit more, it's hard to call Raw must watch, but when they have more important matches instead of on pay-per-view on TV, then, that just makes for more compelling TV in general. So I really, really, really hope, that's like my number 1 thing. I hope that the WWE and AEW to a degree, although they only have 4 pay-per-views a year, so chances are they're going to keep those at between like 3.5 and 4 hours long. But I hope that WWE specifically learns that trimming the fat and keeping their pay-per-views to a really, really impactful 2.5 to 3 hours long is the way to go. That's going to be a way to make your pay-per-views more impactful. I don't think they're going to do this because they've already announced that WrestleMania next year is going to be 1 day, but keeping WrestleMania at 2 days long sort of goes along with this as well. I think that'd be awesome. I really enjoy the 2-day WrestleMania experience. It gets people talking, after night 1 all through up until night 2, and then you get another big show. I think that's the way to go, and you can do a lot more with that. Look at Wrestle Kingdom, when they had a sort of the Jay White Kota Ibushi match night 1. Whoever won that got to take on Naito for the titles night 2. You could do that kind of stuff with WrestleMania 2 where consequences happen from night 1 to night 2. I think that could be a lot of fun. Got a couple honorable mentions here. I really like that AEW had wrestlers in their crowd. Obviously they would have sort of the dark and elevation tier wrestlers at ringside, but then to advance stories, you would see wrestlers in the crowd scouting potential opponents. And I thought that was a really cool way to do things. For a spell before Thunderdome, WWE had wrestlers in the crowd too, wearing masks. They didn't really advance stories. They were just sort of there already, so they used them to beat crowd because they were tested most of the time. But I really like the story convention of having wrestlers in the crowd for various reasons. And I wonder if AEW would still continue to do that. I thought it was kind of cool. WWE, I don't know if they have any desire to do that, because whenever they show a wrestler in the crowd, it's usually for NXT and there's somebody who's being signed. By the way, they should bring that back when fans come back as well. And then the only other honorable mention I have is like the hockey glass in the Capitol Wrestling Center. And they had it before when Raw and SmackDown were at the PC. You had that hockey glass separating the fans from like the wrestlers. I don't know that they'd like keep that around because they like the wrestlers to be able to like, slap hands with people. But at least at the Capitol Wrestling Center, it's kind of cool because you could bang on the hockey glass and it sounds kind of cool. And they've used it sort of as a prop in various ways. Probably my favorite one was when Roderick Strong got so freaked out by Dexter Lumis, he jumped into the hockey glass and fell off of it. I kind of liked it. I don't know if it should stick around, but I kind of liked it. And then, of course, two things that need to go that obviously are going to go, just the Thunderdome. I hope they don't get some idea as to like, hey, let's have fans there and then also Thunderdome. I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they can do that because it's like too expensive and too bulky. But I'm so over seeing this on Thunderdome. I can't stand Thunderdome anymore. I thought that it was a decent temporary solution, but yeah, July can't get here quick enough. And then obviously, of course, there's no need for this. Although, no, WWE did this before pandemic. Piped in noise. They would like still try to alter the fan noise if the fans weren't doing something that WWE wanted them to do. They need to get rid of that. That's terrible. Let the fans be fans. They should make that commitment to the fans when they come back. Say, hey, we're not going to manipulate your reactions anymore like we used to. That's totally not going to happen. They would never cop to that. But I feel like piped in noise is one of those things. You got to get rid of the piped in noise. Like, get rid of that ASAP. It's really cheesy and really bad. So, I mean, when they are literally just lifting crowd noise from 2K19, you got a problem. Anyways, hey, let me know what you guys want to see carried over from pandemic. I really racked my brain on this one. I couldn't think of anything else, but maybe you can out there. Let me know in the comments below. Like I said, do me a favor, give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button and that little notify bell also so you'll always get your wrestle juice when it's fresh. Anyways, thanks everybody for tuning in. Why don't you check out one of these other videos over here? Where's the other video? Be over here. I think, yeah, other videos over here. You can choose this one or you can choose the one below it. 1 or 2. Huh?